Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 9 articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express, especially from the perspective of UPSC Civil Service Examination. In the very first article, we'll discuss the meaning and importance of Doctrine of Essentiality. In the second article, we'll talk about the issues with respect to the MSMEs of India and the way forward. In the third article, we'll talk about the very important People's Biodiversity Registers. In the fourth article, we'll talk about the components of balance of payments. In the fifth article, we'll talk about the concept of Aphelion and Perihelion. Finally, in the prelims snippet section, we'll have a look at some of the very important articles for the preliminary exam. So the very first topic is about the Doctrine of Essentiality. So in its recent order, the Madras High Court has allowed the religious practice of Anga Pradakshinam. We'll see what this practice is all about. Now, this is being seen as a controversial order. So it becomes really important for us to analyze what this Doctrine of Essentiality is all about. Now, this forms a part of GS2. Indian Constitution features significant provisions and basic structure. Now, see, before analyzing this doctrine, we have the concept of religion. Now, the concept of religion has been the centerpiece of human social existence since time immemorial. That is, it is one of the most important part of the social life of a human. And this is more important when it comes to the societies like India, where even the day-to-day life of the individual is affected by the religion, where the religion forms an integral part of the day-to-day life of the individual, right? Now, we all know that the Constitution of India guarantees to its citizens some of the very important fundamental rights. For example, we have got the right to equality, right? So we have got Article 14, which talks about the equality before law and equal protection of laws. Then we have got Article 15. Now, this prohibits against the discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. Then we have got some of the other rights, for example, right to freedom, where we have Article 19. So it talks about the freedom of speech and expression, freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, right? Then we have got Article 25, which talks about the freedom of conscience and the freedom to freely practice, propagate and profess the religion, right? Then we have got Article 26, which talks about the right to manage the religious affairs. And then we have got the very important Article 21, which talks about the right to life and personal liberty. So these are all some very important fundamental rights which the Constitution entitles to its citizens. Now, the point is that some of the religious practices, there have been allegations that some of the religious practices in India, they are found to be in violation with these articles, right? For example, the current practice of Anga Pradakshinam, right? So what it involves is that it involves the rolling of the human over the banana leaves. Those leaves where the people already ate the food. So on those banana leaves, people eat the food, and then after eating, what happens is that some of the persons, they roll over those leaves, right? So it is being seen, and the petitioners in this case have said that it is their fundamental right to practice this practice. For example, they have highlighted the Article 25, which talks about the freedom of religion, that is, right to having the conscience and the free practice, propagation and profession of religion. Then they have said that it is their right to privacy under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. And they're saying that it is also their right to movement under Article 19, subclause 1, subclause D, right? But some others have said that this is also in violation to some of the constitutional principles. Some have said that this practice is discriminatory. It is against the public health, right? So what we see is that the Indian Constitution, if you have a reading of the Indian Constitution, it would be very clear that the freedom of religion is subordinated to all other fundamental rights. How? See, we have Article 25, right? Now, this gives the right to freedom, but it is subject to the public order, morality, and health, and to other provisions in this part, that is part 3rd. So the right to freedom, you can practice the right to freedom, but it would be subject to the other provisions and to these conditions: public order, morality and health. Moreover, we have got the second clause, subclause of Article 25, where it gives the authority to the state to regulate these religious practices in order to promote the social reforms. Right. So obviously, if the state feels that there is a need to intervene, the state can intervene. Now, next is there have been many occasions where the Supreme Court has very categorically, very clearly said that the religious freedom is restricted to only the essential religious practices. Now, this word becomes very important. Essential religious practices. Now, before we go to the next slide, I want you to tell me the name of the case in which the right to privacy was declared as a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. So let me see who answers first in the comment section. Now, in order to balance this right to freedom with other fundamental rights, Supreme Court or the judiciary in general, they were confronted with a question. The question was how to determine what essential religious practices are. First, what are the essential religious practices? And then what is the procedure which has to be employed in order to know what these essential religious practices are all about. Now it was in the year 1954 that the 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court in the Shri Shirur Math case came up with this idea that it invented the doctrine of essentiality. That is, the Supreme Court would determine what constitutes as an essential religious practice of a particular religion, be it any religion. Any practice, whether it is essential or not to that religion, would be decided by the Supreme Court. Now, this doctrine of essentiality has been featured in subsequent cases. For example, if we talk about the Dargah case, the Dargah Committee Ajmer case of 1961. In this case, Supreme Court categorically clarified that the right to freedom is only applicable to the core and integral practices of a religion. So it is only applicable to the core and integral practices of a religion. Then in the case of Gram Sabha of village Batiz Shirala of 2014. Now this was a very peculiar case in which a particular sect, it demanded that the capturing and the worshipping of a live cobra should be considered as a part of its essential religious practice. But what the Supreme Court said, it referred to Dharm Shastras, and it said that this is not a essential religious practice, right? So it said that we cannot allow that the capturing and the worshipping of a live cobra as an essential religious practice. Then we have the Muhammad Fasi case of 1985. Now in this case, Supreme Court said that if you have a police officer, he cannot keep the beards. Why? Because keeping beards was not mandatory according to Quran. Now this is what the Supreme Court interpreted. Then we had the other case, that is Acharya Jagdishwarananda Avduta case of 2004. Now in this case, we had a particular sect, that is Ananda Margi sect. Now they said that the dance, the Tandava dance, is an integral or essential part of their religion, that is Ananda Marga sect. But the Supreme Court clarified that no, Tandava dance is not an essential religious practice when it comes to the Ananda Marga sect. Then we have the another case of Muhammad Ismail Faruqi of 1995. Now in this case, what the Supreme Court said was that though praying or offering prayers was an essential component when it comes to Islam, but offering prayers in a mosque is not an essential practice. So what the Supreme Court said, that though praying was an essential part of the Islam, but praying specifically in a mosque, that is not an essential practice. Then we have the case of Indian Young Lawyers Association versus the State of Kerala of 2018, popularly known as the Sabrimala case. Now in this case, Supreme Court went into the discussion whether the ban with respect to the women and the girls between the age of 10 and 50 was it according to the sort of Ayappa shrine or not. So the Supreme Court clarified that no, it is not an essential practice when it comes to the Ayappa shrine, right? So these are some of the cases where the doctrine of essentiality has been featured. Now, what have been the benefits, or what are the benefits of judicial intervention when we talk about the doctrine of essentiality? The first is that it ensures the balance between the fundamental rights. Take the case of Sabrimala. What happened in Sabrimala was that the Supreme Court, it attempted to strike a balance between the right to equality and the freedom of religion. Right? So that is one thing. Next is, it ensures social justice. See, you may criticize, but the fact is that time and again, at various instances, Supreme Court has come and rescued the people who are deprived. How? That it has actually put a ban on those religious practices which are discriminatory. where you have the people from the marginalized and the vulnerable sections who are suppressed, right? Then it ensures that the constitutional morality is given primacy. Now, the point is, whenever the Supreme Court has decided on these cases, it has taken into consideration the constitutional morality. First, the primacy has been given to constitutional morality and then to the sort of religious texts, right? So that is very important. Next is, it ensures the primacy of the rule of law. That is not the primacy of the rule of religion. India is not a theocratic society, right? So we have the primacy of the rule of law. Next, it protects the essential practice of a religion. Now, finally, this is something that which is very important. Let's say if Supreme Court has declared a particular practice as an essential practice. Now, the executive or the legislature, it cannot arbitrarily interfere in that particular activity, right? So that is what the benefit is all about. But there are some concerns. So there are some issues. The first is with respect to the question that you are giving the authority to the Supreme Court to decide as to what constitute a particular practice as an essential religious practice or not. Now, should it be decided by the judges or should it be decided by the community at large? That is a very important question. Next is, there is no fixed parameter. Now, we referred to a lot of judgments. Now, in all these judgments, we had different parameter. That is, we had different benchmark. In some cases, the Supreme Court has referred to essential religious texts. For example, we have the Quran, we have the Dharma Shastras. While in some cases, the Supreme Court has referred to the empirical behavior of the followers, how the followers follow a particular religion. Then in some cases, what has happened is that the Supreme Court has examined whether a particular religious practice, it existed at the time of the origin of the religion or not, right? So these are some of the factors there, but there has been no consistency with respect to these parameters. Next is, some of the legal experts have clarified that when the Supreme Court started talking about the doctrine of essentiality, it has come into an area where it has no competence, because it is deciding upon the religious questions, and that is not where the competence of the judges lie, right? So these are some of the issues. Now, what is supreme? What is supreme? See, the supreme is constitutional morality. That is as Dr. Ambedkar also said, that it is the moral principles which underline the constitutional provisions, which should guide the actions of the state. So what we see is that, all right, we have got the doctrine of essentiality, but Supreme Court should always make sure that while exercising the doctrine of essentiality, it should take into consideration the progressiveness of the society, that the society becomes more progressive, that the conditions are more just. However, it also needs to be emphasized that in societies like India, where you have got religion as an integral part of the daily life, adequate importance or due regard should be given to religious practices also, right? So this can be a way forward. Now, the next article is about the MSMEs of India, that is micro, small and medium enterprises. So recently, the executive director of the RBI has pointed out a very important concern, and that is with respect to the access to finance in special reference to the women-led businesses. Now, this is a part of GS3, Indian Economy and Issues. Now, talking about the MSMEs in India, they are actually termed as the lifeblood of the Indian economy. Why? Because they play a very crucial role when it comes to promoting entrepreneurship, when it comes to promoting industrial development, when it comes to promoting balanced regional development, when it comes to creating employment opportunities. So in all these domains, MSMEs play a very crucial role. Now, the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, it has classified the MSMEs on the basis of the investment in the plant machinery and on the basis of the turnover. So do remember that the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises classifies different industries on the basis of the investment and on the basis of the turnover. For example, we have got the micro industries. Now, the investment in plant and machinery or equipment should not be more than 1 crore and the annual turnover should not be more than 5 crores. Then when we talk about the small enterprises, we have got the investment in plant and machinery not more than 10 crores and annual turnover not more than 50 crores. Then when we talk about the medium enterprises, the investment in the plant and machinery should not be more than 50 crores and the annual turnover should not be more than 250 crores. Now, these sort of classification becomes really important for your preliminary exam. Now, what is the importance of MSMEs in India? See, there are around 7 crore MSMEs in the country. in India, and they provide employment opportunities to more than 12 crore people, right? So look at the number. More than 12 crore people are employed in MSMEs. Then talking about the contribution of MSMEs in the India's GDP. So we have the Confederation of Indian Industries, CII. So according to the CII, the MSMEs in India contribute to more than 30% when it comes to India's GDP, right? Then when we talk about the spread of these MSMEs, what we see is that they are spread across the country. Now, the benefit is that once they're spread all across the country, it does a balanced regional development. So there is a balanced regional development. Moreover, it avoids or reduces the migration to urban areas for the employment, right? Then MSMEs also foster innovation because they develop those technologies which are important for the local needs. Also, what we have seen is that many of these MSMEs, they have been promoting the entrepreneurship, right? So that is creating to more number of employment. So these are some of the factors on the basis of which we can say that MSMEs play a very important role. Now, talking about the challenges which are faced by the MSMEs. See, as we talked about, the basis of the article is about the access to finance. So the most important challenge is that the MSMEs lack timely and affordable credit. Because see, what happens is that you have got the traditional lenders, for example, banks. Now, they often perceive these MSMEs at risky borrowers because these MSMEs, they don't have, let's say, the capacity of collateral, or they don't have a proper banking transactions. So that is the reason the traditional lenders, they try to avoid giving loans to these people. So what happens is that according to the RBI, what the RBI data says is that around 16%, only 16% of the MSMEs were able to get timely credit from these traditional sources. Then next is limited access to domestic and international markets. Now, this is one of the major concerns. Because of a lot of regulations in place, because of the competition from larger players, what happens is that their capacity to compete with larger player is reduced, and that also reduces their access to domestic and international market. So also the Confederation of Indian Industries says that this is one of the major roadblocks when it comes to accessing the markets, whether domestic or international, when it comes to the MSMEs in India. Then keeping pace with technological advancement. Now, this is very obvious. Once the MSMEs don't have access to finance, once they don't have requisite amount of capital with them, obviously they won't be in a condition to invest in the technological upgradation. And once they would rely on obsolete technology, their productivity would also be sort of compromised. So that is where that they have a difficulty when it comes to accessing better technology. When we talk about the larger companies, is that they have got good amount of resources with them, and that's the reason they're able to access technological upgradation. Now, next regulation is, and also what we see is that according to the MSME Development Institute data, almost 42% of the MSMEs find it difficult to access technology, right? Next is complying with multitude of complex regulations. Now, the sad part in India is that we have a lot of regulations which are to be followed. Now, what it does is that these MSMEs, they have to give a lot of time, they have to give a lot of money, they have to give a lot of their resources in order to comply with these regulations. Thus, what ultimately happens is that they are unable to focus upon their core business activity. Right, so they're unable to focus upon them, and that's would obviously make them unproductive. Next is the lack of skilled manpower. MSMEs, what has been seen is that some of the MSMEs, they require skilled manpower, and that skilled manpower is not adequately available in the market. Also, the National Skill Development Corporation's report says that there is a huge gap when we talk about the skills demanded by the MSMEs and the skills provided by the market, right? So there is a substantial gap. Now, what have been the government intervention, the government schemes when it comes to promoting the interests of MSMEs? The first is the Credit Guarantee Fund Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises. Now, this aims to provide a guarantee to the traditional lenders so that they can provide collateral-free loans to the MSMEs. And you would be surprised to know that this, in the year 2022 and 23 alone, has provided guarantee to loans more than 3.1 lakh crores. Right. So this is what the importance of this fund is all about. Next is we have got the scheme of Pradhan Mantri Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency, commonly known as PM Mudra. Now, this aims to provide collateral-free loans up to 10 lakh to these MSMEs, right? And till now, if we talk about till 31st March 2023, this scheme has been able to sort of give collateral-free loans to the tune of more than 18 lakh crores, right? Since the time when it came into being. Next is Credit Linked Capital Subsidy Scheme. Now, this is a very important scheme. What it does is that it provides the subsidy with respect to, it provides subsidy of 15% when it comes to the technological upgradation, right? So that is a very important scheme. So what happens is once you have got good technology, it definitely gives you an edge. It gives you more competitive, it makes you more competitive, right? It modernizes the machinery. So these are some of the benefits. Then you have the Pradhan Mantri Employment Generation Program. Now, this scheme aims to increase the employment opportunity. It aims to provide the self-employment opportunities, right? And according to the data, what it says is that more than 1.3 crore jobs have been actually made through these scheme. Next is Entrepreneurship Skill Development Program. Now, this scheme aims to train or promote or equip the entrepreneurs with proper skills so that they can start and manage their own sort of businesses. So this is obviously one of the very important schemes in creating more employment opportunities. Then we have got the Udyam portal, very important. Now, this is an online portal. This is an online portal which tries to facilitate the working of these MSMEs. And obviously, it also tries to give them some of the benefits which they did not get prior to their registration on the online platform, right? So this is obviously one of the very important platforms. And to give you the data, on 4th of July, 2024, just before a few days, the number of MSMEs registered on the Udyam portal was more than 96 lakhs. Right, so do remember this. So these are some of the schemes which the government has provided. Now, talking about the way forward, what should be the way forward for a healthy and prosperous MSME ecosystem in India? The first and the foremost is financial empowerment. So we have a study by the International Finance Corporation, and it says that there is a gap of more than $1 trillion. I'm not saying billion, I'm saying trillion. There's a gap of more than $1 trillion when it comes to the MSMEs in the emerging economies. So what should happen is that we need to expand these credit guarantee schemes. For example, as we just studied, the credit guarantee fund trust for micro and small enterprises. So that would make the traditional lenders, see, once you have got these trust, they can take a guarantee, and then the traditional lenders, for example, the banks, the scheduled commercial banks, they would be in a better position to lend money to these MSMEs. Then what can happen is evolving alternate financing mechanisms. See, we have got different mechanisms, peer-to-peer lending, right? Or we have got the venture capital. So they need to be exploited so that these MSMEs have more avenues for proper finance. Next is fostering market access. Very important. See, as I said, that because of the complex regulatory environment and because of the competition faced by the larger players, like by these MSMEs from the larger players, what happens is that these MSMEs are unable to access the market. So what we need to have is that we can actually support these MSMEs in collaboration with the e-commerce platform. So once these MSMEs are linked with the e-commerce platform, that would reduce their geographical limitation. That would provide them with new opportunities, new avenues. Next is reserving a specific percentage in government procurement. Very important. I hope you are aware what is GEM, Government E-Marketplace. Please post in the comment section under which ministry this GEM portal works, right? And under which department. Now, Government E-Marketplace specifically gives importance to the procurement when it comes to the MSMEs. Right. So more such, whenever you have got the public procurement which takes place, adequate attention should be given to the MSMEs. Next is that we need to bridge the skill gap. Very important. See, we need to make sure that the government and the industry, they collaborate, and then they can have targeted skill development programs. Now, once you have got targeted skill development programs, it would reduce the gap between the skills available in the market and the skills demanded by the industry, right? Next is apprenticeship programs. It is important because these programs focus upon providing the practical training. So it moves beyond the concept of theoretical learning, right? Next is simplifying regulatory environment. Very important. So the World Bank has also highlighted the complex procedures which are there in the Indian system. So there needs to be a reduced compliance burden on MSMEs, so that, see, they don't have enough resources, they don't have that much time. So if you have got reduced compliance burden, that would make them sort of more productive. They would be able to invest more time and energy in the core business activities. That is very important. Next is implementing a single window clearance. Obviously very important. In order to reduce the time framework, in order to reduce the resources which are actually these MSMEs spend, we need to have a single window clearance system. Next is encouraging innovation and technology adoption. Very important. So what we need to make sure is that as the larger companies are able to access the technologies, even the smaller companies should be able to do that. How they can do that? By, if we have got grants and tax benefits for the research and development, so that they can develop their own products and services, right? Then initiatives like the scheme for upgradation of technology should be there. As I said, we have got the scheme, credit linked capital subsidy scheme, which provides for 15% of the funds for the sort of technological upgradation. So a proper technological upgradation needs to be there, so that they get rid of the obsolete technologies. So what we see is that MSMEs are very important. We need to incorporate these strategies so as to make MSMEs more robust and ensure that we have, once MSMEs are robust, we can have a more inclusive growth, a more sustainable growth. Now, before we go to the next topic, we have a very important question from the year 2023, a prelims question. It says, consider the following statement. According to the Micro, Small, Medium Enterprises Development Act of 2006, the medium enterprises are those with investments in plant and machinery between 15 crores and 25 crores. All the bank loans to the micro, small and medium enterprises qualify under the priority sector. Which of the following statements are correct? 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, or neither 1 and 2? Post your answer in the comment section. So coming to the next article, we have got the balance of payment. So we have an article in the Indian Express which says that it was the first time in the 11 quarters that India has witnessed a current account surplus in the financial year 2023-24. So we'll look into what balance of payment is all about, what are the different components, right? So this is with respect to GS3, trade, government budgeting. Now see, what is balance of payment? See, we have a country A. Now this country A does economic transactions, different kinds of transactions with the world. I'm saying with the world, not with a particular country. So the list or the ledger of all the economic transactions which this country is doing with the world is seen in the balance of payment. So balance of payment gives you the view that what a particular country is having transactions with the world. Now, if you break this balance of payment, then it can be divided into two components. First is the current account. The second is the capital account. Now, when we talk about the current account, it is, as the name says, the transactions are of current nature. What do we mean by that? Let's say the transactions involving the export and import of goods, or the transactions involving the export and import of services, or the transactions involving unilateral transfers, let's say the remittances. So these are of current nature, right? Now, if we break into this current account into different components, we can have the first as the export and import of goods, merchandise trade. We're talking about tangible goods. Let's say if India is importing cars, or let's say if India is exporting machinery, so that comes in export and import of goods. Now, the balance of the export and import of goods, it is termed as balance of trade. So do remember, right? Then the second component of the current account is the export and import of services. Services, for example, let's say we have got the investment banking services, shipping services. So for all these services, the transactions you have, they are counted in export and import of services. Now, please remember, these are of intangible nature. We cannot touch them, we cannot feel them, right? So that is where we call them intangible. Now, the import and export, the summation of both is actually termed as balance of intangible trade. Right? Invisible trade, you can say. Next is the unilateral transfers. Now, what are these unilateral transfers? See, there are countries which can send gifts, donations, right? They can make philanthropic donations, or you have got remittances which India receives. So all the unilateral transfers, they are termed as a part of the balance of payment and under the current account. So do remember. Next is income receipts and payments. Now, whatever, let's say if India has sort of invested abroad, and if a company has invested abroad and it is earning interest, it is earning profits, so that comes into the interest payment comes into the current account. That is how you segregate, you divide this current account. Talking about the capital account, see, as the name says, the transactions which involve the capital account, they are not of current nature. They are more of investment oriented, right? Let's say you have got foreign direct investment, or let's say you have got foreign institutional investment. So the transactions which are of investment related, which involve the asset and liability of the country, that forms a part of the capital account. So the first part is, the subcomponent is the borrowings and lendings. Whatever India is borrowing, that is, India means the government or the companies in India, or whatever the India is lending to, giving to other countries, that forms a part of capital account. Then you have got investments. You can have some of the investors from abroad. They may be investing in shares in India. They may be investing in land in India, right? Real estate. So this is investment. Or you can have Indian residents investing abroad in different countries. So that forms a part of investment. Now, this is primarily of two types. We have got foreign direct investment. Now, what happens in foreign direct investment is that the buyer, he actually has a control over the asset, a direct control over the asset. Let's say if someone is investing through the foreign direct investment, he or she will have access to that particular asset in India, right? Let's say the land. Then you have got foreign institutional investors. Now, they also invest in shares or some other revenues, but they don't have a direct stake, a direct control over that particular asset. So that is where the investment, the difference in the investment lies. Then you have got the change in foreign exchange. See, the government has foreign exchange. So the change in the foreign exchange reflect the changes in the balance of payment, right? So these are the three components of the capital account. Now, the news says that this is the first time in the 11 quarters that India has witnessed a surplus, if you can see, 5.7, right? So this is in terms of the $1 billion. So look at this. It is the first time in the 11 quarters that the current account has shown a surplus. Now, if you look at this chart, we can see that we have got the current account. So just look at the current account is showing a positive trend. That is, in the Q4 of the financial year 24, it is positive. Look at this. It's negative. Look at this, negative. In financial year 21, it was positive. But we are talking about the individual quarter. Now, see, we have got the trade in goods, as I just said, right? That is tangible. Then we've got the trade in services, that is invisibles, right? So what the summation of this would be? Balance of trade. And what the summation of this would be? That is balance of invisible trade, right? So do remember this. Then we have got, in this, we have got services and transfers. Coming to the capital account, we have got the foreign investment. Look at this, FDI and the FII. Then you've got the loans, banking capital and other capital. Then the summation of this, the capital account and the current account, it gives a balance of payment. So this is how you look at the balance of payment. So this is a basic description about the balance of payment, including the capital account and the current account. Now, before we go further, this is a prelims question with respect to 2013. The question says, the balance of payment of a country is a systematic record of all import and export transactions of a country during a period of time, normally a year, goods exported from the country during a year, economic transactions between the government of one country to the other, or the capital movements from one country to the another. Let me see who answers first in the comment section. So the next topic is about the People's Biodiversity Register. So a panchayat in the Alappuzha district of Kerala, it has updated and come up with a comprehensive People's Biodiversity Register. Now this becomes important for us to see what this People's Biodiversity Register is all about. Now this is a part of GS3, Biodiversity and Conservation. Now, what is People's Biodiversity Register? Now, this is a comprehensive record of the various aspects of biodiversity in a particular area. So it tells us about the various biodiversity aspects in a particular area, in a particular local area. Now, what it talks about is the preservation of habitats, the conservation of land races, folk varieties and cultivars. Then it talks about the domesticated stocks and breeding of animals. Then it talks about the microorganisms. It talks about the chronicling of the knowledge relating to the biological diversity. Now, please understand, what is the basis of this People's Biodiversity Register? See, we have got the section 41 of the Biological Diversity Act. Now, please understand that it is the Biological Diversity Act, which has constituted the National Biodiversity Authority at the national level. So you can see it is an autonomous statutory body under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Very important information for your prelims. Then the second body it has constituted is the State Biodiversity Boards. So the state biodiversity boards have been constituted under this act. Then you have got the biodiversity management committees. So these BMCs, they are constituted at the local level. So at the apex, you have got the National Biodiversity Authority, then you have got the state biodiversity boards, and then you have got the biodiversity management committee. So do remember. So the section 41 of the Biological Diversity Act, it mandates the development of the People's Biodiversity Register at the local level. Now the key word is the local level. Please, I'm emphasizing is because this becomes very important. The constitution or the sort of development of the People's Biodiversity Register is done at the local level. Now, as I said, the biodiversity management committees are created by the local bodies under the Biological Diversity Act of 2002 for promoting conservation, sustainable use and documentation of the biological diversity. So what you have is that the BMCs are the ones who actually prepare this People's Biodiversity Register. Now, what is the importance of People's Biodiversity Register? The first is it helps in conserving biodiversity. When you have got the BMCs at the very local level, when they have a comprehensive record of the biodiversity available in that area, this can guide the policy actions. They can know that yes, the number of this species is coming down or the number of a particular species is going up. Let's say the invasive alien species, right? So it helps in proper policy formulation. Next is benefits from genetic resources and traditional knowledge. So it actually ensures that these people at the local level, they can share the benefits of these biological resources. Now talking about this, there's a question. Can you tell me the name of the protocol which talks about the equitable access and benefit sharing of the genetic resources? Tell me the name of the protocol and do write in the comment section. Now, next is that it regulates the access to the biological resources. Obviously, who needs what resources, whether the resources should be provided or not. So it properly regulates it. Next is, it is a decentralized way. See, we are having the BMCs at the local level and they are preparing the People's Biodiversity Register. So we are incorporating the views of the local people, especially the tribals, the vulnerable people. So they are having a say in the decision making process. So that is a decentralized way, a bottom-up approach, an inclusive approach. It traces how the habitats are changing. Very important. We are already witnessing the anthropogenic climate change, the effects of climate change, and they are more pronounced when it comes to the biodiversity. So once you have got proper People's Biodiversity Registers, it helps us to know what are the changes and what can be the policy approach. Now, as of now, according to the National Biodiversity Authority, there are almost 268,031 People's Biodiversity Registers, and the state of Uttar Pradesh, UP, has the highest number of PBRs. So that is what you need to know about the People's Biodiversity Register. So the next topic is with respect to the Aphelion and Perihelion. So yesterday on Friday, the Earth reached the Aphelion point. We'll see what Aphelion is all about, what Perihelion is all about. So this is with respect to GS3 awareness in the field of space. Now see, different planets around the sun, they don't revolve in a perfect circle, right? So they have an elliptical orbit. For example, we have got the sun and we have got the elliptical orbit, right? So they don't move in a perfect circle. We have an elongated orbit, right? So what happens is, first of all, what is the reason for this? See, different planets, they exert gravitational influence on each other. And that is what it makes the planet to have this elongated orbit. That's the reason they don't have a perfect circular orbit. Now, which is the planet which is the most massive? It is the Jupiter. So that's the reason that the Jupiter exerts the most influence, the most gravitational influence when it comes to this elongation orbit. And this is one of the greatest reasons. Now, how do we measure this elongation? Elongation in the sort of the circular path. So the more the elongation is, the more the eccentricity is. So it is measured by the eccentricity. See, now the higher the eccentricity of a particular planet or a celestial body, the more elliptical would be its sort of orbit. For example, if we talk about the eccentricity of Mars, it is 0.094. If you talk about the eccentricity of Pluto, it is 0.244. So it is having a more elongated orbit than the other planets. Then if we talk about Earth, its eccentricity is 0.017. So this is what you need to have an idea, that what the elongated orbits are with respect to the eccentricity of that particular planet. Now, please see this diagram. We have got the Earth as at the farthest point. So the farthest point from the sun, when you have the Earth at the farthest point, we have got the Aphelion. Now this is at a distance of 152.1 million kilometers. Now the nearest point, when the Earth is at the nearest point with respect to the sun, we have got the Perihelion, right? So the distance is 147.1 million kilometers. So do remember this. So you have got the farthest point and we have got the closest point. Now what effect does it have on the temperatures on the Earth? See, when the Earth is at the Aphelion, we have at a greater distance, So what happens is that the Earth receives lesser sunlight. So what the effect it has is that in the northern hemisphere, we have got some milder summers and milder sort of winters. But this effect is obviously offset because the Earth has an axial tilt. Earth has an axial tilt. So because of that axial tilt, what happens is that this effect of the distance, it is offset. Next, what would happen if there were no aphelion? Let's say if the Earth revolved around the sun in a perfect circular orbit. So what would have happened is that the duration of the day and night of all the seasons would have been constant. Right now what we witness is that the duration of day in summers is somewhat longer, right? And duration of the day in the winters is somewhat lesser. But if we had the Earth revolving around the sun in a perfect circular orbit, then we would have had a perfect equal day and night in all the seasons, right? But what would happen if the eccentricity of the Earth increases? If it goes to that level where it is beyond control, then it could have catastrophic impact, where the summers would be unbearably hot, very hot, and the winters would be unbearably cold, right? So that is what you have to know with respect to the sort of aphelion and perihelion. So coming to the prelim snippet section, we have got the first topic as the Axiom 4 mission, or we can say the AX4 mission. So what the government of India has said is that it is sending its two designated astronauts of the Gaganyaan mission for the Axiom 4 mission. Now this is a private space flight to the International Space Station, and the flight launch would be somewhere in the October, and it would stay there for 14 days. Now the flight would be operated by we have got a different private startups, private enterprises in the US. So one of them is Axiom Space and the other is the SpaceX. We all know about it. So we will use the sort of Crew Dragon. You can see in this image, we'll use this spacecraft of the SpaceX, and it would be the operational part would be handled by the Axiom Space. Now there are some crew members, and it is a very important feat which India would be achieving, because it would have 2 Indians as a part of this mission, right? So we have got one of the persons from the US, then we'll have a pilot which is to be announced, then it would have a specialist from this country, then we'll have a specialist from India, and then we have got the backup crew in terms of a person from US, and then to be announced, that is a person from the India. So this is what you need to remember about the particular Axiom mission. Now talking about the CONCOR. Now this is the Container Corporation of India, a very important organization, a very important public sector enterprise under the Ministry of Railways. Very important. So do remember that it comes under the overall jurisdiction of the Ministry of Railways. Now this is primarily responsible for the transportation and handling of containers, right? So you have got the cargo containers. Let's say you have got the containers coming from the ships, through the ships, and these are then transported inland through these Container Corporations of India. So it is actually making sure the management and transportation of these containers is being dealt effectively. Now, CONCOR operates 3 core businesses. First is the cargo carrier operations. Second is the terminal operator. So it operates as the terminals. Then it is also a warehouse operator and multimodal logistics provider. Right, so we have got the multimodal. As I said, let's say if you imagine a cargo coming through the ship, then it is being transported through the rail network, and finally it is then transported through the big trucks, right? So that is a multimodal logistics framework is all about. Now, given the India size, rail transport is often a cheaper mode of conveyance when it comes to the cargo, right? over medium and long distances, especially if the cost of intermodal transfers can be reduced. So this is what you need to know about CONCOR. The important part is that it comes under the overall jurisdiction of Ministry of Railways. Now coming to the Food Corporation of India, a very important body. So the Food Corporation of India is a public sector unit, and it is set up under the Department of Food and Public Distribution, which is under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution. Please understand that this is a statutory organization because it has been created under the provisions of Food Corporations Act of 1964. Now, the primary duty of the Food Corporation of India is to undertake purchase, store, move or transport, distribute and sell food grains and other food stuff. It is the Food Corporation of India which has been since the Green Revolution days acting a very important part when it comes to the food security of the nation. So the first objective of the Food Corporation of India is to provide remunerative prices to the farmers, to ensure that the farmers receive adequate amount of money with respect to their commodities. Then to help in ensuring the food security through the provision of 3 A's: accessibility, affordability and availability. Right. So we have got the accessibility, we have got the availability and affordability. So ensuring these 3 A's, the Food Corporation of India works. Maintaining satisfactory level of operational buffer stocks, very important. In order to have emergency or exigency plans, Food Corporation of India stores buffer stocks. Then we have got distribution of food grains throughout the country with respect to the public distribution system. So it makes sure that the vulnerable sections of the society, they are given adequate food resources, adequate nutritional value, right? Then effective price support operations are also handled by the Food Corporation of India. And in this article, which we have taken, the base is that it manages the stocks and supplies of food grains. So we have got the open market sales scheme, domestic with respect to the rice crop. So that is what you need to know about the Food Corporation of India. Now, talking about one of the very important institutions in the country, and that is National Council for Applied Economic Research. Now, the reason I have taken is this because this is one of the oldest organizations in the country and one of the very important sort of think tanks in the country. So it is the oldest and the largest independent, not-profit economic policy research think tank. It is situated in Delhi. Now, the origin goes back to the year 1956, when the then finance minister, he sought the help of the Ford Foundations to set up an economic research policy institute in India, right? And it was on the basis of his sort of approach to the Ford Foundation that finally it culminated into the origin of the National Council for Applied Economic Research. Now, the importance of the organization is that it works into varied domains. For example, it works in growth, macroeconomics, trade, international finance. Then it also deals with investment, climate, industry, infrastructure. It also deals with agriculture, natural resources, poverty, human development, gender, consumer behavior, scientific collection, innovation, curation of economics. Thus, it makes this organization very important because it has a wide domain of study areas. A lot of domains are actually taken care of by this organization. So that is it for today. I hope you like the session. All the best.